afternoon. Welcome to Great Garment Graphics, and I wanted to thank you for joining us for the webinar that we're presenting today, which is Spring Sports, Get on Top of Your Game with Proper Sizing and Placement. My name is Jodi Weiler, and just a little bit about myself. I have worked for Stahls ID Direct for 5 years, and a bulk of my time here has been spent in the customer service department, where I've had the privilege, the rare privilege, I think, of many, to hear really what sort of have my thumbprint on the industry and really get a good understanding of, what our customers are looking for and what their customers are looking for. And also, and then I moved over to the marketing department, where I do a lot of work with Great Garment Graphics. So if you send me a question, if you send Great Garment Graphics a question, typically I'm the person who answers it, or I get that question or inquiry off to the right place. And one question that we do definitely receive is about sizing and placement. How do I apply names? How do I apply numbers? Where's the best place for things to go? What is the industry standard for this? And so I thought it was a really good idea, since we had spring sports right around the corner, to present a webinar on this very topic. It is a broad and comprehensive topic, so obviously I don't think I will be able to cover every single question you may have today. But just a couple housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, if all of you could just kind of type in if you're able to hear me, if the audio's good, I would really appreciate that. So I know I'm not talking out into a blank abyss. So if you could just do that, because I can see your questions coming in perfect. Good. It sounds like everybody can hear me. That's good news. Also, we do record our presentation, so if you happen to have to leave early, you have to pick your kids up from school, you get an order, your phone rings, you can always come back to Great Garment Graphics and view the archived webinar. But what would be an even better idea is to go to greatgarmentgraphics.com and sign up for our blog, where you will actually get any type of add-ons that I talk about in the webinar, and also a recording, and also a little blog post, kind of wrapping everything up into your email box, so you don't even have to go searching for it. It actually comes to you. So I will remind everybody about that, and at the end of the presentation as well, I'll touch on, just kind of these housekeeping notes. And finally, with your questions, since everybody can hear me, you can just type them in at any time. I will try to answer them while we're doing the presentation. I think it's usually a little more relevant than waiting till the end, but some of them may have to wait till the end, and whatever I can't answer, I will make sure I get answered to either via email or included in the blog post. So with that, let's get started. I know your time is valuable. Let's see if I can. Okay. Looks like my slide doesn't want to forward here. Give me just 1 second. So one of the things that for spring sports, and you guys will have to type in if I forgot any, but the main ones that I touched on were lacrosse, soccer, baseball, softball, and I did include a personal favorite of mine. It's not really a spring sport. It's more like a year-round sport, but roller derby, and so I thought we'd talk about that for a little while, because that is the fastest growing sport in America, and as a business owner, you can actually have a pretty lucrative time of investigating that this sport. So our agenda today, I first wanted to review sizing requirements for popular sports. And so that is actually like, what size does the name have to be? What size is recommended for the number? And then we'll move into placement recommendations. So once I know what size I need, where should everything go? And then we'll just kind of touch on some unique placement. I do have an illustration for that, all the kinds of unique places when we get beyond the actual jerseys, when we're getting into like fan wear and even just other aspects of your business, interesting places that, maybe you hadn't thought about in order to apply. And really all you need is a heat press. And then finally, some little application tips and tricks from our industry experts. And these are just kind of little things that, little tidbits that I'd like you to take away that I think you will definitely find beneficial. So the first sport we'll talk about is lacrosse. And typically, your lacrosse uniform is constructed of 100 denier nylon tricot mesh with a 2-ply polydazzle on the shoulder and the yoke. So oftentimes, that's not really a material that you want to use thermofilm for. Now you could on the actual jersey in the center or on the back, but when you get up into that shoulder yoke, you're going to need thermo grip for it. So because of that nylon component. So some common letter and number sizing decorating regulations. They're usually different for youth and adult. So for the name, the standard youth size is 2-inch. The standard adult size is 2-inch to 3-inch. So it's often like hockey. A lot of times you can start off with 2-inch for your smaller and mediums. And then when you get into, and because of the padding, a lot of times you actually need larger jerseys. So then you kind of move into a 3-inch for adults. So it does vary. And keep in mind, these are just standards. These, obviously, your leagues may vary from area to area, state to state. So these are just some kind of general guidelines, but obviously you'll want to check with the league that's placing the order in order to get their definitive requirements. So for your front number on the youth, 3-inch is a good standard. And then for the adult, I have 8-inch, but I don't think that's right. It should be 4-inch, actually, for lacrosse. And then for your back number on youth, you want to go 8-inch for the back number, and you can go up to 12-inch. 8-inch isn't bad for an adult size, but lacrosse typically, because of the larger jerseys, go 12-inch. And then on the shorts, which is usually the left hip or the lower leg on the shorts, 3-inch for youth and 4-inch for adult. So those are just general regulations, but if we wanted to break it down into high school regulations and college regulations, in high school regulations, typically for boys, the front jersey numbers must be at least 8 inches in height, and the back numbers have to be 12 inches, period. For girls, the shirt has to have a number at least 6 inches tall in the center on the front and 8 inches tall centered on the back. Numbers on the shorts are typically optional, but they have to match the shirt numbers. So that means they have to be actually the same color combination as the front of the shirt. And so for college, the jersey has to have at least 10 inches in height centered on the front. The numbers on the back have to be 12 inches in height. That's a general standard regulation. For women's lacrosse, the front and the back of the shirts must be numbered. So the back numbers must be at least 8 inches tall. The front numbers must be at least 6 and centered on the chest level. Numbers on the short, again, are optional, but they do have to match the shirt number. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in. For soccer, mostly soccer jerseys are made of moisture-wicking cool mesh polyester. And the nice thing about soccer jerseys is because they're polyester, there's a lot you can work with. So there's a lot of heat transfer materials that you can use for it. Thermofloc is typically very popular. So that is an option. I mean, the standard obviously is screen printed numbers or vinyl numbers. That is an all-around, go-around standard. But flock is becoming more and more popular as in the soccer world as far as lettering and numbering. So you can also use thermofilm. You can also use thermogrip. And I don't know if you've noticed anywhere in the soccer industry, but a lot of times the sponsors or the logo on the left front chest, whether it's the school or whatever company that's sponsoring that soccer team, are often made of, well, what I started noticing a couple years ago was a digitally printed flock. And so it had a texture to it, and it was digitally printed. And so we've been able to create this here at Stahl's ID with CAD Prints Permatwill. So it is that texturized, some may call it a patch, but I try to steer away because it's not really a patch. I mean, a patch has edges that are sewn and is heat applied. And typically the CAD Prints Permatwill, you can sew it, obviously, but you don't need to because it's cut with a laser. But it is printed twill, so it has the texture and it pops. The color is extremely vibrant. And so for soccer, this may be something you definitely want to offer to your customers as this option. Instead of trying to do a screen print that may crack or peel over time, obviously, because of the washing, the screen printed definitely offers that higher end look for it and is super popular in the soccer market. and then obviously screen printed. And for most of these, I do want to keep in mind that you can use screen printing and you can also use vinyl. It's really an option. What you're going to want to do is find out what's most cost effective. How big is the league you're doing? You may find that screen printed numbers, like say from Transfer Express, or names and numbers are more cost effective. If you're just doing 12 pieces, then typically vinyl will be more cost effective, let's say in a pre-space player name or even die cuts. So some common letter and number sizes for soccer is, again, the name typically for youth placed on the back is 2 inches. For adult, a good standard is 3 inches. And you can also use 2-inch names for adult, but a good standard is definitely 3-inch. For the front number is 3 inches, and that typically is in the goes on like the left chest on the other side where the logo is not. And 4-inch for adult. And then the back number for youth is 8-inch. I have seen 6-inch numbers on the back of soccer jerseys, but a good standard is 8-inch. And then the adult size is 9-inch. But very common, just because it's so much easier to find the color combinations. For youth, oftentimes is 6, and for adult is 8-inch. And then the shorts, again, is 3-inch and 4-inch, typically worn on the hip. The numbers must be worn on the back, and no number can be smaller than a 6-inch, whether it's youth or adult, women's or men's. And then obviously the leagues can decide if they actually want their player names displayed on the back of the uniforms. So for any of you who watch sports, you can see some teams opt to name the back, some teams opt to not name, put names on the back. Obviously, for youth and little leagues, it makes more sense to not name the back of the jerseys. That way they can just reuse the jerseys the following year for the next little leaguers that are coming in. For adult leagues, oftentimes they have a little bit more money to spend, and so they can, they're going to end up taking their jersey home with them. I do have a little video I wanted to show, if we can get out there, for decorating soccer jerseys, and I'll just kind of talk you through it. We're starting this is actually Josh Ellsworth. He presented a 84-minute video on decorating all different types of athletic apparel. And then he also broke it down into sort of 6 to 8 to 10-minute segments in each sort of section. And so I'm just taking a couple minutes out of each of these videos to show some nice illustration for you, because we all would rather see something than hear it anyway. And so what he's doing is he is just preheating the garment. So that's definitely one step to never forget. And then you can see as far as the placement goes, he did the front, and it's on that front is about 3 inches below that yoke. And this is a V-neck, which you'll find actually a lot with soccer jerseys too. Most of them typically are V-neck. And then he's heat applying again, and then you can see looks like a 2-inch name and a 6-inch number to me. All heat applied in one step. That was actually CAD cut out. And then Stahls actually does offer a team set where you can actually get the name and number together as well, where you actually, if you don't have a vinyl cutter, you don't actually have to get it. We can cut it for you. So let's go back to our slideshow here. Okay. So moving forward into my personal favorite spring and summer sport is baseball. We're here in Detroit. Big Tigers fan. We had Transfer Express actually here today visiting us, and I actually got to make a Detroit Tigers t-shirt, which made me very excited because it's winter and we're slushed in right now. Those of you who are listening from California and Florida, I'm very envious. Those of us here in the slush are ready for spring sports to be right around the corner. So typically a baseball jersey, as you know, is typically, sometimes it's t-shirts, so a lot of times it's either cotton or 50-50 blends, more for adult leagues. But typically they're moisture wicking polyester. A lot of them are split front, so you do have to, they have the button down jersey, so you do have to apply to either side, which I am going to show you actually in a video demonstration shortly here. So oftentimes some of the heat transfer materials you definitely want to use, a lot of times the higher end are decorated with poly twill and sewn. You can also use thermofilm, and then also plastisol, goof-proof plastisol transfers as well are all widely used in the industry in order to decorate baseball jerseys. So the common sizing, once again, and so it seems pretty standard for names and numbers, is that the youth size for the lettering is 2 inches. An adult is 3 inches. 2 inches is really common too. It's definitely not uncommon, especially for softball. And then the front number on the youth is 3 inch. And for the adult is 4 inch, which goes just right on the front, just below the breast typically. And then the back number on a youth is 6 inch. For adult size is 8 inch. So on the back though, the numbers, you have to have a number for baseball on the back. You don't necessarily need one from the front, but it is super common. I would say it's definitely more common than not, but it's not regulation. The only real regulation is the number on the back. But I do think the jerseys look better with numbers on the front and the back. And also, once again, this is also a thing where the league actually decides if they want to place a name on the back of the jersey. And it's pretty much the same thing, at least I found in the industry, and I'm sure you found. For youth and little leagues, typically, oftentimes there's just a number so they can reuse the jersey the next season, but that's not definitely always the case. And then for adults who tend to buy into the league, they're going to take their jersey home with them and they want a name and a number. Okay, so for decorating the baseball jerseys, what I wanted to illustrate here, and this does actually show a couple minutes, and I'll talk everybody through it, but this is actually decorating a split front, which is probably the second most asked question I receive. How do you decorate a split front? And I can tell you that business owners have called me and said, I have stayed away from doing split fronts. I have stayed away for all this time because I'm terrified of it, particularly when it comes to twill. Most of them felt comfortable maybe doing thermofilm or CAD cut, but when it comes to twill, I have a great video on Great Garment Graphics exactly illustrating how to sew on, if you contract out your embroidery or if you're an embroiderer yourself, how to sew on a split front. But for these purposes here, we're actually just doing a CAD cut, but it's a 2-color. So your first step is to undo the buttons and then dress the platen. Typically, you want to do the left side that isn't buttoned, that doesn't have the buttons on it, the left placket first. And so you make sure it lines up, line it up on the platen using a heat printing pillow. Oftentimes there's a, what do we call that, like a braided seam on the jersey. And so you definitely want to eliminate getting any, not getting proper adhesion due to inaccurate pressure, due to seams, any type of braiding, any type of wiring through there. So for these purposes, Josh already had designated where he wanted the left placket to be decorated onto. He had already placed it properly. The nice thing about today's jerseys, when I first came into the industry, you had to kind of do custom sizes, or you had to remove that second button in order to make way for putting the team name on there. And so uniform creators definitely caught wind of that, and so now they typically leave like a 4 to 6 inch space between the buttons, which is really nice. There's no more like taking off the buttons and sewing on a Velcro button the way you had to do in the past. So that's definitely been a really nice development, and we're really glad that uniform decorators, or actually uniform providers, have heard us screaming that this was kind of a nuisance for us. So typically most jerseys do come standard with And I'm sure you've found that in your own industry. That's definitely been a nice switch to see. So here, Josh, he sort of read his second color as far as cutting, which you often may find that you even do. And so he just simply cut off that little part that was missing and replaced it. And now he's applying the second layer right there, or excuse me, the second color. And it's done super fast. It's not on the screen. You only see like a half a second of it, but really it's a 8 to 10 second application. He is using thermofilm. And so the interesting thing I wanted to note here is now when we get to the second part of the jersey. So you already have your pillow underneath there. You're going to put the other part of the placket with the buttons on it over the pillow. You're going to preheat the garment. And you'll see Josh actually do what I've done a million times, and that's going to be try to lay down this design without making sure it's lined up. Here we go. I'm so excited. I've got my left placket to rest. I'm going to lay it down. Oh, wait a second. I need to make sure everything lines up. And yeah, it's not lining up. Good thing I double checked. There we go. So we have to move it a little bit. And put the cover sheet back on. And so since he took that proper step there to make sure everything was buttoned up and lined up, what we're going to end up with is a jersey that looks seamless once you button it up, and in 2 color no less. So I don't think we need to see any more there. I don't want to, okay, so let's go back to the presentation here. Okay. So softball typically, the uniform materials is the same as baseball, although for women's softball, it is still that Wick and Cool mesh polyester, usually a medium weight moisture. But what we've found a lot now moving into the softball uniforms is a lot of racerbacks, not quite so many as the standard baseball button-down jersey, but a lot of different looking, more racerback, sleeveless type jerseys. And so definitely poly twill you can use for softball. That's definitely a popular material that's still required, that a lot of customers are still asking for. Also thermofilm is perfect for it. And then once again, a goof-proof plastisol transfer. So for the number sizes, the name, once again, 2-inch for youth, 3-inch for adult. I've also, like I said, seen 2 inches standard for adult size as well. For the front number, 3 and 4-inch, it's pretty much the same as baseball. The back number, 6-inch or 8-inch. And then for the shorts number is typically 3-inch or 4-inch. So once again, the numbers have to be worn on the back, can absolutely, whether it's youth or adult, be no smaller than 6 inches. And then the leagues then decide if the players' names will be displayed on the backs. And I do have one final video, and then I'm going to close these out because I know it's slowing down my presentation here. But this I wanted to illustrate, like I was saying, with the racerback jerseys. And here's a perfect example of them. So here's a racerback sleeve. It's not really a racerback, but it's a sleeveless jersey with a V-neck yoke. This is really common for softball. And what I also wanted you to notice is how that yoke, since we're not using a heat printing pad, that yoke, the seam on it has to be off of the platen in order to ensure proper adhesion and even pressure throughout. And also, when we're talking about placement, you can see it's about 3 inches down from the center. And he's a pro, so he can just kind of slap it down and get it right. Me, I have to do a little bit of eyeballing, sometimes a little bit of measuring. It takes me a little bit longer. And Also, what I wanted you to see is that you can play around with fabrics and materials, and there's so many different materials that teams are using now. It's not just thermofilm, one color, white, navy, black, or two color. We decorated with an airflow, which actually has air bubbles, like what do I want to say, like material missing from it, so it looks like it's actually made of mesh. And so the airflow is what he used on this softball. But teams now are using glitter flake to decorate. Um, Carbon fiber. I mean, teams are really, really looking for, they just want to get out on the field and pop. And so oftentimes now it's not enough just to have the one color, two color thermofilm, red, white, black, and navy. Obviously, there's still a high demand for that, but teams are definitely, definitely branching out. And it's just been a really exciting thing to see because there's so much to do and sports, are so popular. It's nice to see them kind of get with the program, kind of follow up with fashion or actually take the lead from fashion, really. So I'm actually going to just close out here because we're done with the videos. So then that way maybe my presentation will move a little faster, and thank you for your patience. So we're going to move into my near and dear to my heart, most favorite sport ever in the wide world, and that is actually football is my favorite sport, but I'm a little too small to play it. So roller derby actually is what we're going to talk about right now. So when it comes to roller derby, here's one thing that most of their jerseys are made of moisture-wicking polyester. Typically, their front logos are high, full color, so a lot of times they're either digital or they are screen printed for the fronts. And since they are polyester, you can play around with several materials. So I just want to remind you, roller derby is the fastest growing sport in the country for women and actually for men as well. There's leagues popping up all over the country. When I was in customer service, from the time I started in customer service, and I actually played roller derby myself until I had an injury, never saw anything with logos or kind of roller derby oriented. By the time I was leaving, I filled at least 2 to 3 orders a day for roller derby teams. The great thing about roller derby teams, they're not unique like any other sporting team, but their fans absolutely love them. They want to see their favorite derby player name on everything. They want to see their favorite team on everything. And the derby girls love to promote what it is that they do. So they will decorate their water bottles. They will decorate their cars. They will decorate their gear bags. They will decorate their helmets. They will decorate 17 million hoodies that they can wear every day of the month and the week with their name and their team logo on it. So everywhere they go, they can recruit, because recruitment is a huge, huge thing. So if somebody sees that you play, they want to know about it, they want to ask about it, they want to get them playing, which is, of course, and they do a great job, which is why it's growing. So I urge you to just do a little research, see where the local roller derby league is in your area. I can promise you there is one, if there isn't 2 or 3 or 4 that are popping up. And also if you have a youth or men's league available, and try to market to them. They're really simple to decorate for. They're pretty easygoing. Their names actually are typically 2-inch, but they can go a little smaller because oftentimes they do wear sleeveless jerseys. But they also oftentimes have cap sleeves too. And in derby, you have to have a sleeve number. So if they're sleeveless, the girls typically write their number on their arms, or if they have a cap sleeve, they can put their number on there. So that's typically like a 2-inch number, sometimes 1.5 inches. The back number has to be a 4-inch minimum. A 4-inch minimum number on the back is required no matter what. They don't need a name. They definitely don't need a number on the cap sleeve, but you have to have a number on the back. So there's my little plug for roller derby. I hope all of you do some research and start making a ton of money off of it. Coming soon. Just so you know, the season does actually run September through April, so it's not really a spring sport, but it does. They do play year-round. They do scrimmages and also fundraising from April until season starts in September. So now let's move into placement. So for placement, This is the second biggest question I get. So now I know how big my names and numbers should be. Now I need to know how to place them. So definitely when it comes to jackets on the left chest, this is actually the hardest area in which to find a position. And I know for me, decorating, it was definitely trial and error. And so that's why I want to impart this wisdom to you so you don't have to ruin 5 or 10 jackets in order to get it right. So a common mistake definitely is to place the design, which I've done. Everybody raise your hands if you've done it, too close to the edge of the shirt, which then kind of once you put it on, your design's actually in the armpit, under the arm when the shirt is worn. And so the key there is we typically want to go 3.5 inches to 4 inches over from the center's edge. And you can find the center typically where the tag is. And obviously if it's a zippered jacket, then, we know where the center is. But a good way to find the center is to, the tag is typically in the center. And that's a good way to find it. Or there's oftentimes a center seam as well. But for a jacket, so 3.5 to 4 inches over, and then 6 to 8 inches down from the seam, that's the shoulder seam. And then you can kind of get that right down, proper placement over on the left chest. So for a jacket back, it actually, and also keep in mind, once again, I do want to remind you that these are guidelines. And so, sizes vary. If you're doing a 2X, your actual inches where you need to go down and over is going to vary from if you're doing a women's small. So that being said, it definitely depends on the jacket and the design size. But one nice guideline is 6 to 9 inches down from the seam of the collar to find the design center. And the shirt tag, once again, like I said, is a great way to find the center of the shirt. And one little tidbit for me that I found is when I'm looking at the back of a shirt or a jacket, when I go to the center of the armhole, that typically seems to be a good center. Maybe just a little, maybe a quarter or a half an inch above the center of the armhole. And you'll find that that's usually, when you put it on, a great placement for the back of a jacket or a t-shirt. So now for polo shirts, we typically want to go about 7.5 inches to 9 inches down from the shoulder's left seam, and then 4 to 6 inches over from the center, in line with the collar meeting. I use my hands a lot as measurements. I don't always have a ruler handy. And so typically when I'm doing kind of a polo shirt, I will place my hand from the left seam where the buttons are, and then on where the outside of my hand is often is a pretty good guideline to the center. And one thing to note is to definitely use a pillow or a print perfect pad so that the buttons don't interfere with adhesion. So when you're placing a pillow or a print perfect pad in there, there's 2 ways you can do that. And I do mention this again at the end of the presentation. But pillows and print perfect pads actually work 2 different ways. So a pillow, when you insert it into your shirt or your garment or your jersey, your jacket, whatever, is actually going to your seams, your buttons, your zippers are actually going to depress into the pillow in order to get even pressure all the way throughout, so you get an even adhesion and application. A print perfect pad actually works the other way. What you're actually doing with the print perfect pad is you're actually elevating the design. So you're not really trying to depress over seams or buttons or zippers. You're not trying to streamline over that. You're actually raising the design above your seam, button, or zipper in order to have those fall below it, fall underneath, and then you're actually just applying the area that you want to apply. So oftentimes what people do is they actually cut their print perfect pads in a left chest sort of way. The longer one, I think it's like an 8.5 by 15, is perfect for kind of cutting in half, placing inside of there. So you're just kind of you're elevating that heat printing area in order to get proper adhesion. And you can see there, we have just sort of the illustrated there, the measurements, and then you can see it in practice. And you can see the center of that 4 is really the guideline that was used. So we're going 7.5 inches down, not from the top, and 4 to 6 inches over, not from the left-hand side, but actually really from the center of that design of the 24. So you can see you can get proper placement on a polo shirt no matter what the design size is we're typically looking for the center. Moving on to our favorite, the t-shirt. And I did keep this as a sporting sort of themed t-shirt, but it's the same standard for all t-shirts. And you want to go about 7.5 inches to 9 inches down from the shoulder's left seam, and then again 4 to 6 inches over from the center. Now most full front designs will typically be centered on the shirt. So many shirts will have a print line, which I talked about already, which is that line in the center denoting a vertical. And then the shirt tag should also be in the center most times. And so then the horizontal center can be found using also, like I said, the bottom of the arm seams. So on this one you can see they've kind of gone from the bottom of the arm seams and then to the bottom of the beginning of that drop down tail, not the bottom of the flyer where it's the flyers where the pointy end, but the curved edge is typically lined up with the bottom of the arm seam. One other thing to remember is make sure that the collar yoke and the arm seams are off of the platen for proper adhesion if you're choosing not to use a pillow or a Print Perfect pad. So for a sweatshirt, the top of the design, you want to go down 3 inches to 3.5 inches down from the bottom of the next edging, and this is for just a regular sweatshirt that doesn't have a hood. And once again, like I said, this is just my little note. I usually lay my hand across the shirt below the yoke, or what we call the bottom of the next edging, and then place the design below my thumb, and that is usually about 3.5 inches. And that seems to be a good width for me. So if you are Tarzan with really big hands, maybe you want to use your ruler or your lettering layout boards because you may be going 6 or 7 inches. But for me, I think my hand width is like about 3 to 3.5, so it works well for me. Just a little tip for me since I don't often have rulers laying around. So the hooded sweatshirt, the back and the front, this was the biggest challenge for me when I first started heat printing in customer service. And I can't tell you, I had placements all over the place. And everybody loves a hoodie. I have at least 5 or 6 of them that I wear that are in my regular circulation. They're warm, they're comfortable, everybody wants them. Now, applying onto them definitely has been for me a project in trial and error. So one definite rule of thumb, after talking to industry experts, for me, I started off, I had to like put the hoodie on and then kind of have somebody look and measure, because what happens is when you're laying it down on your platen or laying it down on the table to see where you want to put it, that hood comes down nice and low. And so you may think, oh, this is where this is a great place to put it. And so you heat apply the name or the number right below there. And then once you put the hoodie on, the number or name is way too low and the hood has raised up about 4 to 5 inches. So the best rule of thumb for that, in order to avoid that situation, when I could tell you I've encountered more times than I'd like to impart to you, is that you actually hold the hoodie up and then by its shoulder sleeves and get the seams like lined up. That top shoulder seam is lined up with the ceiling, so it's in line. That's a really good guideline of where that hoodie's going to lay once it's worn. And so then you can get an idea of where the back of the hood lays, and you'd want to apply underneath that, unless, of course, your customer's required or asked for a different placement. But you always want to go just below that hood. Another option, too, is what is super popular is actually putting the number underneath the hood with the name below it, because the width down there, and that's really a great placement. It definitely makes it pop. I see it all over the place. And I did want to illustrate to you with the name on top and the number below, and then that inverted placement with the number on top and the number below. So I do hope I've saved some of you ruining, and it doesn't really ruin the hoodie, but most people, when they go out in public, the public doesn't notice it, but I notice it, and I'm sure you guys do too. Now this is just a nice little handy dandy sheet that I'll actually include in the blog post, and I'll have it included with our webinar wrap up that you can just download and print for yourself. Is a popular logo placement sheet. And so this is for lettering and also for fan wear. But these are sort of all the different places that you can get a logo, you can get a name, you can get a number, just really unique options instead of just kind of always going full front center, always going center in the back. A really nice placement I like, and even for your, if you were to print out your company's name or your company's website, is this right underneath the yoke, this one that's in the second row, third over. That is, or on the left sleeve, just real tiny on the left sleeve, is a great place if you are able, and also on the inside too, as a tag, almost with tag placement, to put to just cut out or have printed either in CAD prints or CAD cut out your company's website. And that way everybody who gets your shirt is aware of where they got it from. Of course, you have to see from the league if that's allowed, but just keep that in mind as a great way to market your company and to get reorders. So we also have, a lot of times we're seeing over there on the left seam or the right seam, the back of caps, the right ends of caps underneath the cap visor has become a really popular placement. And then also, your other add-ons for duffel bags. And you can also heat apply using specialty platens. You can heat apply onto the end of that duffel bag that's in the bottom on the far right. You could see on the ends with a smaller platen, or actually a Print Perfect pad. There you go. If you insert a Print Perfect pad into that duffel bag, you can actually heat apply onto the ends your player's name, your player's number, the team logo, things like that. Umbrellas for those rainy spring games. So let's now move into some application tips and tricks. So Bruce Wyant, who I don't know how many of you have come back to Great Garment Graphics, but he is one of our great presenters here. He's one of our salespeople. He has a ton of knowledge. He definitely, his little tip when I asked him was, when lining the shirts up on the platen, make sure that their collar tag is not off center. And so I put this in because I knew I was going to be telling you that the tag is a great way to find the center. And so the one key is definitely to make sure that the tag is actually not off center. And then next you can use the underarm area to center your shirt on the top of the platen and then check again on the bottom of the shirt. This will give you 3 reference points for correctly aligning your shirt. So thank you, Bruce, for that tip. And I also included a photo of the lettering layout boards because these will definitely help you when we're talking about inches. These are definitely great measurement tools. They're like $3. I think they're $1 a piece if you order them off of Stahls ID Direct. I mean, they're just one of the most cost-effective things you can have in your shop and handy next to your press. And so they're arched in order to create arched names. So you see the half moon, measured widely in order for name placement, and then the other size is a straight edge where you can get things placed properly and lined up. So our next tip from Peggy Dwyer, one of our customer service representatives here, is that while metal zippers can withstand a heat press, but plastic ones cannot. And so maybe some of you have discovered this through trial and error. So one thing to be careful is to place plastic zippers, snaps, and buttons either off the heat press machine, as they will melt and heat under the pressure of your press, or once again, here's where pillows and Print Perfect pads come in handy. And so, one thing I would definitely say is those 2 accessories and really the layout boards are kind of like a must-have in your shop. You can definitely do without them, but why make your life so difficult? Just, sport for them and save a lot of time in the end. Now, since so many of uniform jerseys are polyester, one thing we've definitely, and they're that moisture wicking polyester, right? And so one thing a lot of my customers have been experiencing is sort of that heat printing box that happens when you're dealing with polyester. And definitely there's a few ways to eliminate it. Now, one of the best ways is to use a flexible application pad that can eliminate that heat box. But keep in mind that the flexible application pad, it is texturized, so it is going to create sort of a texture on whatever it is that you're heat applying. And you also want to raise your heat press temperature about 5 degrees because the flex pad does draw out heat when you're heat applying, so you definitely want to accommodate for that in your heat application process. Another great way to do that is, remember I talked about that 8 by 15 Print Perfect pad. When using that, when you haven't cut it and you're using it in its full length, it's absolutely perfect for heat applying names. Either 2-inch names, 3-inch names. And so what you do once again is, instead of getting that large heat printing box, you're actually elevating that name and the name only and heat applying on it so you don't get that box. You may get it, smaller right around the name, but it's just not noticeable. So that definitely is 2 ways to eliminate that. If you're doing just a smaller left chest logo, it's great to to cut that 8.5 by 15 and elevate the left chest on polyester, and then that way, once again, like I said, you're only elevating that area, so you're not getting that large square 16 by 20 heat press box that we've been noticing more and more on that, particularly on the moisture wicking. Also, I've seen it appear on sublimated garments. And, your darker, your reds and your navy polyesters. I think the red polyester is the largest culprit for it. Oftentimes it will disappear after washing, but, the thing is you don't want to hand your customer something that has that big heat printing box and you're not going to wash before you give it to them anyway. So that's definitely 2 ways to eliminate that situation we've been seeing with what we call, I guess, the heat printing box. So another tip is when you're applying a design to a hoodie using a clam style press, you dress actually the hoodie upside down on the lower platen. So you're coming in from, the hoodie's actually hanging off towards you, and this allows for that bulky hood to just drape off the front of the platen instead of kind of like trying to shove it in between the back arm and your back platen. And then another tip is the 3.5 by 15 Print Perfect pad. It's what I actually just mentioned. Works great not only to eliminate that heat printing box, but is also great for applying straight printing names across the jerseys with heavy seams. And you place the pad actually inside the jersey to lift this area. And so a lot of times, and this is perfect for baseball because a lot of times you'll have that braiding on the back as well with the better made jerseys. And so in order to eliminate that, a Print Perfect pad or actually a pillow really works great for both of those. And then our final tip is with spelling names with pre-cut, die-cut letters, or some of you call it pre-cuts, some of you call it die-cuts. In a 4-step process, step number 1 is to place a long piece, actually a pre-mask tape on the table from the left to the right with the actual adhesive side up. Then you can stick each letter backwards to the tape. So if you can imagine you're kind of like looking down at the back of your design, and you actually stick each letter to the tape using the top edge actually as a guide to get a straight edge. And then once you spell the name backwards using the tape as your carrier, you simply turn it over, place the name on the garment where needed, you cover and press, and then you peel the tape off after heat application. That is one of my faves. So that concludes today our presentation for your placement and sizing. And I'm actually now going to take a look at our questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them just right into your chat box there. And the first question is, will there be PDFs of the slides? Absolutely. So if you go on to greatgarmentgraphics.com and apply for the blog and sign up for the blog, you will receive the blog right in your inbox where there will be a link to the PDF of the slides. There will be a link to view this recording, and also I will include that unique placement sheet that we saw. I think it was maybe on slide 10 or 12. I will include a link to that as well that you can just kind of print out and keep in your shop next to your heat press. So the next question is, how do you heat apply onto the inside of a cap bill? And I think maybe you're meaning underneath the cap bill. And that's a really interesting question. Definitely with a heat, obviously with a cap press, all of them are done to heat apply folded down. So if you, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I've actually never have I heat applied onto the inside of a cap bill? And I don't think I have. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out how to do that for you. And Mary, I will email you, or I'll actually include it in the webinar blog post. And that way, anybody who's wondering will know. Is there a handout with where the image decal should be placed on various items? I don't have a comprehensive handout, but if you go onto Stalls ID Direct under the Help and Education section, there is, and maybe I can get a screenshot of that and I will include that in the webinar blog post as well. But it is just a handy dandy reference size for just real small, just kind of lacrosse, soccer, baseball, all of the sports. It does have the sizing. And then, like I said, you will have available to you the logo placement sheet. I'll include that as well. And yes, Robin, you can absolutely view this webinar online at a later time. We do include all of our webinars in the archive section. You can find it at the top tab on greatgarmentgraphics.com, where you can just peruse through at your leisure anytime you want and actually view an archive of the slide, or excuse me, of the webinar. So thank you once again for joining us today. I'm really, really excited that I was able to present this, and I do hope that you found it valuable to you, just kind of as a comprehensive just reference guideline for some of the biggest questions that I do get here at Great Garment Graphics and when I was in customer service. So keeping in that sports themes, join Andy Curtis on March 7th. He's going to do a Kick It Up for Soccer. And so it's going to be all soccer themed with Transfer Express, and they're going to show you the newest kind of trends as far as soccer goes. They'll definitely be showing you, once again, probably good placement ideas, and also new materials. Like I said, I mean, there's just so much happening with soccer that, so I'm excited to definitely be presenting that one for you. And just as a final note, make sure you sign up for our blog or visit greatgarmentgraphics.com. You can sign up for our blog, register for more webinars, or view our archived webinars. And you can do all this and more. We also have handy heat printing tools there at greatgarmentgraphics.com. And one thing I do want to impress you is I'm so glad you joined us, and that, we are here for your education and for your benefit and your benefit only. And if you ever have any questions, if there's a webinar that you would like to see, if you have been getting something from your customers and you want to know about, you want to spread the word, you would like us to present it, please email us at info@greatgarmentgraphics.com. And my goal is within a month or two, you will see that webinar and you will get the questions that you want answered. So once again, thank you for joining, and make it a great day.